are you guys doing? Good. I'm glad to see you guys here. I'm just organizing a little tackle and hanging out, wishing I was out on the lake in some warm weather. Glad to see you. So today, while you're here, let's go over some of the stuff that I've been looking at. I got all of my finesse stuff out today, and I'm going to go over how to fish some of this, how to rig it, and we're going to do a video afterwards, a close-up showing you guys exactly how to rig it. So it's basically a how-to video, and stay tuned and I will teach you guys some freaking awesome ways to catch some giants. Okay guys, the first thing that I want to go over, and my most used and probably a lot of people's most used bait, 100%, obviously, the Senko. Million ways to rig it, no wrong way to fish it, and it's basically foolproof. It's what I started out on, it's what a lot of people start out on. You can give it to your kid and have them just toss it out there, and more likely they're going to catch a fish. So I'm going to show you guys my two favorite ways to rig it first. My very first way to rig it is a Texas rig. And what I like to do with this is I bury the hook all the way through the front, all the way to right where it bends. Right where that hook starts to bend and come straight down. As soon as it hits that bend, I'm going to pop it out. I'm going to pop it out and roll it all the way up to the top. And the reason why I go all the way down to this bend is because from your hook point to the inside of this bend is the exact same distance from this elbow all the way up to the top of your eyelid. So this is going to go right over the top like so. And you see how it's exactly right where it needs to be. And the eye is hidden inside, which is going to protect your knot and just keep everything in there, you know, just a lot better. I also think it keeps the Senko pegged better. So the next thing you want to do, and this is the most important part, is right where the hook is flat, that's where it's going to go through your Senko. So you're going to line your Senko up. You don't want to stretch it out when you do this. You just want to line it up perfect with where it's flat and pinch it. Right where you pinched it, you're going to bend it and go right through where you pinched it with the hook, all the way throughout the top. Once you do that, it's going to look like this. Oh, that wasn't very good. Even the pros mess up sometimes, guys. There, that's a little better. So once that's there, what I like to do is I stretch it back out and bury it, the hook point in there just a tiny bit. I don't want to miss a fish because it's buried in there too much, but I want it to be weedless. And I'm just going to toss it out just like this. And I'm telling you guys, this is a great way to catch fish year round, and especially this time of year. The way I fish this and the way I fish a lot of the same stuff is I'll cast this out and I will literally just hit the bail, and it's just gonna fall, and it's literally gonna fall really slow. You're dang near bait fishing this thing. You're gonna let it fall for like 10 seconds if you're fishing deep, which you probably should be this time of year. You're gonna let it fall, and as soon as it falls all the way, which you're probably not even gonna be able to tell when it's all the way on the bottom with this thing, you just gotta time it. And you're just gonna pick your rod tip up, shake it up, and just reel in your slack and just let it fall again. And the whole time I'm letting it fall, I never have a straight line. If your line is straight and there's no slack in it at all, that means your bait is not on the bottom, or it's not gonna reach bottom. It's coming towards you like in a pendulum. So you need to keep some slack in that line all the time, even when you think it's on the bottom. When I'm fishing these things, I'm staring at my line. I'm not staring at my rod tip. I'm staring at my line. You'll see your line pick up before you even feel the bite. So a lot of times you can set the hook simultaneously. A lot of times I just pick it up a little bit and you feel he's there, and bam, set the hook. You set the hook with this one. This is a Texas rig. It's a thick wire hook. You want to punch it through their mouth. So that's the first one, my favorite one. So that's one way to rig it. The next way I like to rig these things, and this is the way Spencer, who's holding the camera, and I caught them all year like this. And this was the best way. Wacky rig, of course. This has to be in your arsenal. A lot of people, Spencer's a power fisherman. He's never been good at fishing these things weightless. It's tough. The only reason I was good at it, I'm not anymore. The only reason I was good at it is because I started out doing that. And I came from bass fishing, from trout fishing as a kid, where I bait fished. And that's basically what you do with the weightless Senko. So you toss it out there and you're just sitting there, keeping that slack in your line that I talked about. And you're just letting it fall straight down. And it's just gonna wiggle, both ends are just gonna wiggle all the way down to the bottom, and it just drives them crazy. A lot of people think that they think it's a fish, they actually think it's a bug or a worm or whatever. I don't care what they think it is, they just frickin' smoke it. And I like to rig it pretty close to the middle. Sometimes I'll tilt it to either side on purpose just to give it a little bit of a different action underwater or make it fall a little bit different. This is a weedless hook, so you can set the weed guard like that. And just a small little hook, a very small hook compared to the 3/0 offset worm hook that we just used right here. So that is like a killer. Alright, so the next one I'm going to go straight into from here, since I already have this stuff in my hand, is the neko rig. And we started fishing the neko rig like midsummer, just as like almost like a flipping bait, because we were flipping docks so much. And it's so thick with weeds that if you put anything too heavy on around here and go punch, or not punch, but flip docks, that's what it's going to turn into, is punching. Because you got 4 feet of weeds right off the bottom and maybe 4 or 5 feet of water and then dock. So the fish are stacked up in there in between the weeds and the dock, or right at the surface of the tops of the weeds. And so we don't want something that's going to just come by too fast and then you're ripping it through the weeds all the way back to the boat. With this allowed it to fall faster than a regular wacky rig, but still gave it a great presentation, and we were able to fish it faster, cover more water, and it just worked out great, and it turned into one of our like favorite things. We both threw it a ton. And the way I like to rig it is actually with the hook point backwards towards the tail, about right where on this Senko where the smooth part is. They make it look like a night crawler. It's got that smooth part. Rig it just like this, backwards, parallel with the Senko, just like that, backwards. Okay, and a lot of people, when I fish a neko rig, a lot of the time I use a wacky ring with a wacky tool. I put it on about right where I have it hooked through, and I hook the hook through the ring. But this is just as good, completely just as good. The wacky ring just allows you to use the same neko rig over fish, and then before you lose it. So it really helps. But once you've got that in there, and you can even do this part first, it doesn't matter what part you do first, but you're gonna get one of these nail weights and you're just gonna stick it right in the end here. Once you get this buried in here past the end, sometimes we take super glue. We keep super glue on the boat. We'll put a little dab of super glue on the end, or I'll just melt it with a lighter or whatnot. Once you got that on there, put this weed guard on, make it look pretty. Once you got this on there, you sling this thing out. Docks, rock piles, stumps, laydowns, things that where there's probably fish. This thing falls like almost at a 45-degree angle, straight down, just boom, straight down, and they just love it. And when you hop it back to the boat, and with this weed backward, or with the hook backwards like this thing's hopping on the bottom back towards the boat, and kind of mimics a little fish, hopping over weeds or rocks or whatever, and the hook is backwards, so the weeds aren't hitting the point of it, and the bass is just going to come and suck it up right off the bottom. And you're just going to not even really set the hook with this type of hook. You're more just going to lean into it and start reeling. And yeah, this is a straight killer. If you guys don't use this, you're completely missing out, 100%. Then from here, I'm going to go into the drop shot. And the drop shot is probably one of the most diverse ways to fish soft plastics, because you can fish so many different types of soft plastics. And the drop shot was something that I hadn't really picked up too many times until this year. And so I had fished it before, but this year I say that once we weren't getting as many bites on the neko rig, and honestly what made me change to the drop shot was because of COVID, we couldn't find any nail weights. Remember that, Spencer? Mm-hmm. We had to order them online, and so we were out fishing. We both ran out of nail weights, so we took one of these drop shot weights, which I'll show you how to use that here in a second, and we used this as a nail weight and shoved it inside the Senko. And I was sick of doing that because they were falling out easier because they're not ribbed like the other ones. I ended up just saying, screw it, I'm just going to tie on drop shot. And what it did with the neko rig, because I had it Senko on, and if I'm not fishing some sort of bait like this, like a little fish imitator, something with a flat tail or a flat bottom, that's typically how they make these drop shot baits. If I'm not fishing something like that, I'm fishing this. And if I'm fishing for largemouth, I'm fishing with this. If I'm fishing for smallmouth, I'm probably fishing for this, or depending whatever part of the country you're on, spots even, they love that. But with this wacky rig on a drop shot, guys, I'm telling you, and you need to tie this on. If you haven't put a wacky rig on a drop shot, everyone's thrown a drop shot, but believe it or not, a lot of people haven't thrown a wacky rig on a drop shot. So when you throw this thing on a drop shot, this thing falls the same way it normally falls, straight down with both ends, you know, giving it a bunch of action. It does that, but faster. But this thing acts as a parachute in the water, catches a ton of water as it's coming down, and it's vibrating a lot harder. So they're picking up on that vibration, and it's moving quicker than a normal wacky rig, so that entices them to come strike it more. You get a reaction strike out of it too. So I love this. Like, I love this. This is, Spencer makes fun of me for fishing a Senko all the time, and this is basically what I've graduated to, is a wacky rig Senko. That's like my go-to comfort bait. If we haven't caught a fish yet, that's what I'm throwing. Once I start catching fish on this, then I'll up the ante and see what I can push it with and see what else we can catch them on. And that's basically my secret. But I'll show you guys how to rig this real quick, and basically tell you how to fish it. You're just going to want to cast it out there and keep that slack in the line that I was talking about. That's the most important thing. As long as you're doing that, you're fishing it right. Just you reel it in, of course, but when you're sitting there and letting it fall, keep that slack in the line. And when it's on the bottom, keep a tiny bit of slack in that line, and they'll come and pick it up. And I swear, that's the best way to do it. So the way I need to put this hook on first. So Spencer and I, we each have some of these drop shot hooks. I don't know if you guys seen these before, but they sure make it a lot easier. You got your main line tied to the top, you got your leader line tied to the bottom, and your drop shot weight tied to that. So obviously this would be tied to your main line to your fishing pole. I'm gonna put this through, and since this is just your leader, if this gets hung up on a rock, you want it to break. You don't want your main line to break, you just want this leader to break. It's okay losing a super cheap drop shot weight. It's better than losing your whole rig and stretching out your line and everything else. So I'm just gonna tie a simple square knot for this. Have to show off our knot tying skills on another day. because you're going to want to do the same thing. Now, me and Spencer, we fish our weights at completely separate lengths, and I'll fish it at different lengths too, where I'm at. So I don't like a really long leader for one reason. I like to cast with a bunch of accuracy because we fish docks a lot. There's a lot of really nice boats at these docks. We're casting really close to them. I'm trying to get my bait as close to being underneath that dock or skipping it up under that dock as I can. And if my leader is this long or this long, I'm not going to be able to do that very accurately. So that's my thing. So the longest I like to really have mine is about 12 inches. That's where I started out as. And sometimes I lose weights because we just use a square knot. And eventually, sometimes it just keeps getting shorter. And if I'm still catching fish, I'm not going to change it. And so Spencer's seen me with some real short drop shot lines before for that. Only meant I was catching fish. So I like mine about 12 inches. So I'll just tie another simple square knot. I'm going to cut this. I'm going to cut the tag end off of this. Then I'm going to rig up my soft plastic. Now I already showed you guys how to rig up the Senko, so I'm going to rig up this. Just because this is like, when you say drop shot, this is what most people consider a drop shot bait. Something similar to this. And what you're going to do is, this is the head of the bait, this is the tail of the bait. It's flat, you can tell it's meant to catch the water and flap around. I'm going to hook it right through its face and out the top of its head. Just like so. Now when this thing sits in the water, the weight's going to be dragging across the bottom. When you yank it up, the weight's going to come up off the bottom, the bait's going to be swimming up, and then the weight's going to pull it down. So then it's going to come back down, and it's just going to be going like this and like this. Or you can just literally drag it across the bottom, where the weight's literally just dragging over rocks. And yeah, that's basically the two best ways to fish it. And when they're super stubborn and you know there's fish there, people even dead stick it. They'll cast it out there, and I've caught them doing this before. Sometimes on accident, you cast it out there and you go to pick out a bird's nest or light a cigarette or open a beer or whatever, and then when you go to reel the slack up, you got a fish on it. Dead sticking works, guys. This thing will just sit there, and they just come over to investigate it and just suck it right up. So that's a straight killer. Okay, so the next bait I want to go over is obviously the Ned rig. This thing has made a huge splash. Everyone uses this now. 2 years ago, barely anybody used this thing. A lot of people didn't even know what it is. I think that's right about the time I really started knowing what it was, but I still never thought I would ever fish anything this stupid. And then eventually I started fishing something this stupid, and I ended up catching my PB Smallie on this rig right here this year. So the way you want to rig this is fairly simple. It's a small soft plastic. These Ned heads, they're mushroom heads, that's what they call them, or stand up jig heads. They call them a lot of different things, but there's just a flat bottom, flat top. They're meant to sit like this on the bottom. They really don't do that too well unless you're using a Z-Man Elastec or floating soft plastic like the ones we make. This is one of ours. This is a color that we invented, and it's like a crawdad color, and this floats. So because of that, this thing is going to stand right up off the bottom and shake just like they think it's a little crawdad or a little bait fish or whatever. But this is how you rig it right here. You're going to stick it right through the center as best as you can all the way down. Sometimes it's not so easy. Once you get it right around the bend of the hook, that's typically where I pop it out and slide it up. Boom! And you have a perfect Ned rig. And this thing, like I said, sits right on the bottom, tiny little hook. You don't really set the hook with this guy. You just lean into it and start reeling. Any of these light wire hooks like this, that's all you need to do. You don't need to set the hook. And this thing, you cast it out there, let it hit bottom, boom. Once it's on bottom, you can do everything that I just said with the drop shot, you can do with this. You can dead stick it, hop it across, or drag it. If you drag it, be prepared to lose quite a few of these. That's just how it works when you're fishing Ned rigs. Don't go out there with just a few. Bring plenty.
You can also swim it.
Yeah, of course, you can swim it. I haven't caught one swimming it, but I've had follows when I cast it out there, and then I'm like, oh, that was a bad cast. I'm gonna reel it in. I'm cranking it in, and they're chasing it back, and they just turn around at the boat, and I'm like, oh man. But yeah, you can fish this any sort of way. Fast, slow. It's a great way to catch smallmouth. A lot of guys catch largemouth with them too. We just haven't experienced that because our lakes are filled with weeds. You cannot fish this thing like barely anywhere around here. Just a few different lakes. And we were just talking about how it's hard to fish the lakes around here with weeds when Spencer reminded me about these guys. And I actually have some with a weight on them. But this is genius. So this is a 1/0 Texas rig hook, or an offset worm hook. See how the barb's in line with the eye right there. A way you can fish these completely weedless, and Spencer just reminded me of these. And what was the name? The
Tiny Child's rig.
The Tiny Child's rig, right? So the way you rig this is just like how we rigged the very first bait I showed you.
Other way, through the tail.
Oh yeah, through the tail, because we're gonna put a surprise in the other side for you guys. We're gonna rig it through the tail, up to the eye, all the way over your knot. Boom, pinch it, measure it, through the worm or the Ned. Boom. Now you got a completely weedless Ned rig. Now you're gonna take this neko weight, this nail weight right here, if I can get it out. How come they fly out when I'm fishing? There we go.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah. I'm gonna shove it in the head of this thing. Boom. Then you tie it on, sling it out there, and bounce it off the bottom, and it's still giving you that profile that you want, but it's completely weedless now. And when they bite down on it, boom! They get netted about 5 seconds later. Okay, so the final one I want to go over, and I'm going to go over this one real quick because I couldn't shut up about my first few favorite ones, is the shaky head. And the shaky head is a great bait. A lot of people have been using it a lot in the last few years, just like the Ned rig. It's like an oversized Ned rig, and it's a weedless version. And so a lot of these shaky head baits, they're like this. They usually got a thicker body and some sort of flat, long, skinny tail, something that can wave around. And you can really put a shaky head on just about everything. But these type of baits, there's a lot of baits that are specifically made for shaky heads. And there's a lot of guys, this is all they use. A lot of guys in Northern California, this is like all they use to catch largemouth, spots, and big smallies. And it's just a great way to fish, honestly, especially around rocks and hard bottom. And so I'm going to show you how to rig this. And this is a screw lock version. There's other types of versions, but this, in my opinion, and Spencer's opinion, this screw lock is the best. You're going to go ahead and screw that on there. Just get it as close to center as you can. Sometimes it's not completely center, but that doesn't really matter. You're going to screw it on. Boom. Once you have it screwed on, you're going to go ahead and, just like the Texas rig, you're going to line it up with the hook where it goes through here. And with this, you're going to kind of want it to go at an angle. So it's got to go, oh sorry, yeah, this has got to go at an angle like this so that it's as straight as possible. You're going to bury it in there, and when you set the hook, you got to set the hook like a man when you're fishing a shaky head is you got to punch that hook through the bait and through the roof of his mouth or through his mouth. So you got to really set the hook with that, which is like half the reason why we fish, right? So I'm going to show you how to stick it through here. And what you're going to do is pinch it right where it needs to go through and be as straight as you can. Boom. Go a little more. Oh, that's not so straight. Here. Boom. Just like that, guys. That's how you rig a shaky head. And just sling it out there just like the Ned rig. Fish it just like the Ned rig, right across the bottom. Hop it across the bottom. This thing's going to dive straight down. You can really, with the bait like this, you can swing this thing. You can fish it fast like a jerk bait. You can hop it. You can drag it. You can dead stick it. Really good way to fish.
Hey guys, so I just wanted to talk about rods real quick. I've got a few of them here that we use for finesse fishing. I like a 6.6 medium, sometimes medium fast, medium moderate. Just depends. This is a 6.6 medium fast. It's by Lew's. Got a Ned rig tied on there right now. I've also used this for jerkbait fishing. That's a lot of fun too. Here's an old Daiwa 6.6. I've got my drop shot tied on there. And the reason I like this one so much is the tip is really bendy. I think it's a moderate. It's not labeled. This rod's so old, but that's another good rod to use. We're using mostly Yozuri hybrid fluorocarbon, whatever it is, polymer fluorocarbon stuff. It's a hybrid line. It's a abrasion resistant like regular fluorocarbon, but it's also got a little bit of stretch in it like mono. And lastly, this is another 6.6 medium. This is an old ugly stick. I've got some 15-pound braid tied on there, going to another fluorocarbon Yozuri leader. The reason we use the braid a lot of times for Ned rig fishing, it doesn't have any stretch, so you can feel when that fish picks it up, and then the leader just keeps it invisible. But yeah, any spinning rod mostly is best for finesse fishing. It's a little easier to cast when you're doing weightless stuff. You can still do it on a bait caster. I've done it before, no problem, but it's easier with the spinning rod. Length doesn't really matter either. I like the 6.6. Some guys use 7.10s. A lot of times the longer rod helps you cast those lightweights a lot farther. But
I think those guys are just compensating.
Yeah, right. We'll get back to Dre, finish up this video real quick. Thanks, guys.
So we just wanted to show you guys some of our favorite ways that we fish finesse. There's like a million ways. There's a million other baits and other ways, but this is what we fish. And so we felt like we could give you the best information on what we fish, like every time we go out and decide to fish finesse, which for me is every time. So yeah, it's good making a video. Hope to make plenty more for you guys. It's gonna be a long winter. We're gonna try to get some ice fishing in. Maybe we'll get some hunting in. You really never know. We'll get another bait making video in probably, and just waiting around for March, basically. You guys have a good night, day, whatever it is. It's night for me, and I'm tired, so I just said that. But thank you for watching. If you watched this long, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share, and yeah, have a good night.